Okay, wow. Have you ever thought about, like, what you'd regret at the very end? Not in a morbid way, but as a way to, make sure you're living your best life right now.
It's a fascinating perspective, isn't it? To look back and see if our choices actually aligned with what truly mattered to us.
Exactly. And get this, there's this video, right? It features a palliative nurse, so someone who's literally been with countless people in their final moments, and she shares the top regrets she's heard.
It's surprising because you might think those regrets would be about money or fame, but it's not that at all.
Right. Like you wouldn't expect people to be lying there wishing they'd gotten that promotion or bought a bigger house.
Not even close. It's actually much deeper than that. One of the most common regrets is, well, not living authentically.
As in not being true to themselves.
Wow. Yeah, it's like somewhere along the way, people start living for others,
Yeah.
meeting expectations, following societal norms, that kind of thing.
And I guess it's not always these huge life-altering decisions either, right? It could be
Yeah.
like smaller things too.
Absolutely. It could be as simple as not speaking up when you disagree, or holding back on that creative project you've always dreamed of doing.
So basically, kind of silencing that inner voice because you're afraid of what others might think.
Exactly. We get so caught up in seeking external validation, worrying about fitting in, that we end up losing sight of who we truly are. And that can lead to, well, a lot of what ifs down the road.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening right now and they realize, oh, wow, I've been kind of living on autopilot, not really being true to myself. What's the first step to breaking free from that?
Well, I think it starts with acknowledging those whispers of discontent, those little nudges that tell you something isn't quite right, that you're not living in alignment with your true self.
It's like that feeling of, this isn't really eerie.
Exactly. And then it's about having the courage to start making small but deliberate choices that move you closer to that authentic self.
So it's not about some massive overnight transformation, but rather like those gradual course corrections.
Precisely. And those corrections could involve anything from expressing your opinions more openly to, finally taking that art class or writing that book you've always dreamed of.
It's about reclaiming ownership of your choices, even if it feels a little scary at first.
Right. And that fear, by the way, is totally normal. It's just a sign that you're stepping outside of that comfort zone and moving towards something that truly matters to you.
Okay, so we've tackled that first big regret, not being true to yourself.
Mhm.
What's next on the list of things people wish they'd done differently?
Another one that comes up a lot is this feeling of, well, having worked too hard.
Oh, wow, I can see that. Spending all your time and energy on your career, maybe climbing that ladder, but then realizing you missed out on other important stuff.
Exactly. It's this classic case of misplaced priorities.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the hustle and achieving those external markers of success that we forget about what truly brings fulfillment.
Which isn't a corner office or a fancy title.
Nope, it's those genuine connections, the shared moments with loved ones, the experiences that nourish our souls. And it's like, at the end of the day, no one's lying there thinking, man, I wish I'd spent more time in meetings.
Exactly. It's those heart-to-heart conversations, those moments of laughter, the simple joys of being present with the people you love that really matter. And that actually brings us to another major regret, not having the courage to express their feelings.
So, like holding back from saying how you truly feel.
Yeah, whether it's to avoid conflict, maintain a sense of harmony, or protect someone else's feelings. But here's the thing.
Authentic connection kind of depends on being open and honest, right?
Absolutely. When we constantly suppress our emotions, avoid difficult conversations, or pretend everything's okay when it's not, we create this distance in our relationships.
It's like building walls instead of bridges, right?
Exactly. And those walls prevent us from experiencing the full depth and richness of human connection.
So it's those unspoken words, the unresolved conflicts, the missed opportunities for genuine connection that people end up regretting. Exactly. It's like, what if instead of holding back, we had the courage to be vulnerable, to speak our truth, even if it felt a little uncomfortable?
So how do we cultivate that courage? How do we shift from being guarded to being more open and expressive?
It starts with those small steps, just like with embracing authenticity.
Okay, give me an example.
It could be something like writing a heartfelt letter to someone you need to reconnect with, expressing gratitude more openly, or simply practicing saying no when you need to protect your energy.
It's about recognizing that vulnerability isn't a weakness, but rather a strength, a gateway to deeper connection.
Exactly. And as we practice vulnerability, we start to realize that it's not about being perfect or having all the answers, but rather about showing up authentically, imperfections and all.
So we've covered Not being true to yourself, working too hard, and not expressing your feelings. What's next on this regret list?
Well, another big one is the pain of losing touch with friends. Life happens, we get busy, and those friendships that once felt so central kind of fade into the background.
It's easy to think, oh, I'll catch up with them later, but then later never comes, right?
And the regret isn't just about missing out on fun times, it's about realizing that those connections, those shared histories, are irreplaceable.
It's like life just feels richer and more vibrant when we have those people who truly get us, those friends who've been there through thick and thin.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be that way. We have the power to choose differently.
So what's the antidote to this drifting apart? How do we make sure those friendships stay strong even when life gets crazy?
It requires intentionality, just like anything else that matters to us.
As in actually making those connections a priority.
Exactly. Instead of just assuming we'll reconnect someday, we need to actively nurture those friendships, make time for those people, even when life feels chaotic.
It could be as simple as sending a text, making a phone call, or planning coffee date.
Exactly. It's about showing up for each other, celebrating those milestones, offering support during those tough times, and simply enjoying each other's company.
Okay, so we've talked about not being true to yourself, working too hard, not expressing your feelings, and losing touch with friends. That's a lot to unpack already, but I have a feeling the final regret might be the most mind-bending of them all.
Oh, you're absolutely right. This one often throws people for a loop because it seems so counterintuitive. It's the regret of not having let themselves be happier.
Wait, hold on. Isn't everyone striving for happiness? What does that even mean?
It's not about actively choosing to be unhappy, but rather about falling into this trap of believing that happiness is something we'll achieve once we reach a certain destination.
Oh, I get it. The classic "I'll be happy when" syndrome.
Precisely. We convince ourselves that we'll be happy once we get that promotion, find the perfect partner, or achieve some other arbitrary goal. But the problem is,
We keep moving the goalpost, right? We achieve one thing, and then there's always something else we need to attain before we allow ourselves to be truly happy.
and in the process, we miss out on the joy that's available to us in this very moment.
It's like we're so busy chasing the future that we forget to appreciate the present.
And that's where the regret sets in. People realize that happiness wasn't about those external achievements, but rather about those everyday moments of connection, gratitude, and simple pleasures.
So how do we break free from that trap? How do we cultivate a deeper appreciation for the present moment and allow ourselves to experience joy right now as we are?
It's about shifting our perspective, recognizing that happiness isn't a destination, but rather a way of traveling.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here. But how do we make that shift in a practical way? How do we move from "I'll be happy when" to "I'm choosing to be happy now"?
That's a great question, and one that we'll dive into even deeper as we continue this deep dive. It's like we've been conditioned to think that happiness is this elusive thing, something we have to earn or achieve.
Right, like it's out there somewhere waiting for us at the end of some imaginary rainbow.
Exactly. But the truth is, happiness isn't some far off destination. It's about finding those pockets of joy along the way.
And that's where the whole concept of hedonic adaptation comes in.
Exactly. It's this fascinating psychological phenomenon where we humans tend to adapt to new circumstances, both good and bad.
Okay, I gotta admit, that sounds kind of technical. Break it down for me. How does this hedonic adaptation thing relate to happiness?
Well, imagine you finally get that big promotion you've been working towards. At first, you're ecstatic, you're celebrating, telling everyone, feeling super accomplished. But
The
then,
excitement kind of wears off, right?
exactly, the new job, the higher salary, it all becomes your new normal. And guess what? You start looking for the next thing, the next achievement, to give you that same hit of happiness again.
So it's like we get used to the good stuff, and then we need even more to feel that same level of satisfaction. That's a bit of a bummer.
It can be, unless we understand how this adaptation process works. See, the key is to realize that lasting happiness doesn't come from constantly chasing external achievements.
So it's not about those big milestones, but rather about finding contentment in the everyday.
You got it. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already have. And that reminds me of something from that video we're talking about. The YouTuber shared this story about their early days of creating content.
Oh yeah, they talked about how they waited forever to post their first video because they wanted everything to be absolutely perfect.
Right. And then, when they finally put it out there, crickets. Barely any views, no comments. It would have been so easy to just throw in the towel.
But they didn't, right? They stuck with it and actually ended up finding a whole lot of joy in the process.
Exactly. They realized that their initial vision of success, like millions of views and going viral, was actually getting in the way of enjoying the creative process.
So they shifted their focus from the outcome to the journey itself.
Precisely. They started celebrating those small wins, connecting with a few viewers, learning new skills.
And that's when things really started to take off, right? Not in some huge overnight success kind of way, but in a way that felt authentic and fulfilling.
It's a perfect example of how finding joy in the process, in those small steps forward, can lead to so much more than just chasing some external measure of success.
So it sounds like a big part of avoiding those regrets is about taking action, right? Not just sitting around waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect plan.
Exactly. And this brings us to another key takeaway from the nurse's observations, the regret of not having taken action sooner. People wishing they had pursued their dreams, spoken their truth, or simply lived life on their own terms.
But they let fear hold them back.
Right. So often. It's that whole paralysis by analysis thing. We overthink, we second guess ourselves, we wait for the perfect moment, and in the process, we end up stuck.
Okay, so then the key is to just start, even before you feel completely ready.
Exactly. That's the power of taking action, even when you're feeling a little or a lot scared. The video uses this great metaphor. It's like creating a path by walking it.
Oh, I love that. You don't need to see the entire route laid out in front of you. Just take that first step, and then the next one will appear.
Exactly. It's about trusting the process, embracing the unknown, and knowing that you'll figure things out as you go. And here's the thing.
What's that?
Even if you stumble, even if you make mistakes or take a detour, those experiences become part of your journey. They shape you, they teach you, and ultimately, they lead you closer to where you're meant to be.
So what's your advice for someone listening who's been putting something off, maybe a dream project or a difficult conversation? What's that first step they can take to get unstuck?
I'd say focus on identifying one small, actionable step that feels manageable, something that moves you even slightly closer to your goal. It could be sending an email, making a phone call, writing that first page, whatever feels aligned.
It's about breaking down those big, overwhelming goals into bite-sized pieces, right?
Exactly. And remember, it's totally normal to feel scared or uncertain. Don't let fear hold you back. Embrace it as a sign that you're on the right track, that you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
It's like that saying, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly. And here's what happens when you start taking action, even when you're scared. You build momentum. Each small step, each little win chips away at that self-doubt and fuels your confidence.
It's like proving to yourself that you're capable of doing hard things, of creating the life you want.
Exactly. And as you continue taking action, something amazing starts to happen. You shift from a fixed mindset where you believe your abilities are set in stone to a growth mindset where you embrace challenges as opportunities for learning and development.
It's like you're no longer limited by those self-imposed boundaries.
And this shift in mindset can be so powerful. It allows you to approach life with a sense of curiosity, to embrace those so-called failures as valuable feedback, and to see setbacks as stepping stones on your path to growth.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of embracing the present moment and taking action. And I'm really curious about that story from the video about the child asking their mother about her favorite moment in life.
Ah, yes. It's such a beautiful and poignant reminder of where true happiness lies. So picture this. A child asks their mother, "What was your favorite moment in life?" Now, you'd expect her to share some extraordinary memory, right? A grand achievement or a special occasion.
Yeah, like her wedding day or the birth of her child or something like that.
But her answer is incredibly simple and profound. She says, "This moment, right now."
Wow. Just wow. There's so much wisdom in those four words.
It's a powerful reminder that the past is gone, the future is uncertain, and the only moment we truly have is now.
It's like we get so caught up in dwelling on yesterday or worrying about tomorrow that we forget to appreciate the gift of the present moment.
We live as if we have unlimited time, as if tomorrow is guaranteed, but the reality is...
You never really know what the future holds.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to stop deferring our happiness, to stop waiting for those perfect conditions, and to start savoring the present moment, however imperfect it may be.
It's about finding joy in the everyday, in the ordinary, in those seemingly mundane moments that make up the fabric of our lives.
It's about appreciating the warmth of the sun on our skin, the laughter of loved ones, the beauty of nature.
It's about those small details, those fleeting moments that we often take for granted, but that collectively create a beautiful and meaningful life.
And it's about choosing to be present in those moments, to fully engage our senses, and to allow ourselves to experience the richness and depth of the here and now.
Okay, so I get it. Being present is essential. But in a world that's constantly vying for our attention, how do we actually cultivate that mindfulness? How do we shift from being on autopilot to actively engaging with the world around us? I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life, right? Like our
Mm.
phones are constantly buzzing. There's always something demanding our attention. It's like, how do we create that space for stillness and presence when it feels like the world is screaming at us to go, 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 go?
It's interesting you say that because I think a big part of it is actually about recognizing that we have a choice. We can choose to be swept away by that current of busyness, or we can choose to step back and create those pockets of pause.
So it's about being intentional, just like with nurturing those friendships or pursuing those passions.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious decision to prioritize presence, to carve out time for those moments of stillness and reflection.
But how do we actually DO that? Like, what are some practical tips for, hitting the pause button in a world that's constantly telling us to hit the gas?
Well, I think it starts with becoming more aware of how we're currently spending our time and energy.
Yeah.
Are we mindlessly scrolling through social media? Are we constantly rushing from one task to the next without taking a breath? Are we always plugged in, always available?
It's like that saying, wherever you go, there you are. But sometimes it feels like we're not really anywhere, just kind of floating along in this sea of
Yeah.
distractions.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to check in with ourselves regularly and ask, okay, where is my attention right now? Is it serving me or is it just adding to the noise and the overwhelm?
So it's about becoming more mindful, more intentional about where we're directing our energy.
Exactly. And once we start to pay attention to those patterns, we can begin to make different choices.
So, like, instead of automatically reaching for our phone first thing in the morning, maybe we spend a few minutes meditating or just enjoying a cup of coffee in silence.
Exactly. Or maybe instead of rushing through our lunch break, we take a walk outside and really soak in the fresh air and the sunshine.
It's about creating those little rituals, those pockets of pause throughout the day where we disconnect from the noise and reconnect with ourselves.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything grand or elaborate. It could be as simple as taking 5 deep breaths before starting a meeting or listening to a favorite song with your full attention.
It's like those tiny resets that help us shift gears and come back to the present moment.
Exactly. And, the more we practice this, the more natural it becomes. It's like training a muscle, the muscle of presence.
And I think that's a beautiful segue into what we've been exploring in this deep dive, right? All of those regrets, not living authentically, working too hard, suppressing emotions, losing touch with friends, not letting ourselves be happy. It all comes back to this idea of being present, of making conscious choices that align with our values and bring us joy.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about living intentionally, about waking up to the beauty and the wonder that's all around us in every moment.
And it's never too late to start, right? No
Yeah.
matter where we are on our journey, we can always choose to course correct, to make those small but powerful adjustments that lead to a more fulfilling life.
Absolutely. Remember that path we talked about earlier, the one we create by walking it? Well, it's never too late to change direction, to take a detour, to forge a new path that leads us closer to where we want to be.
So, if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive, it's this: you have the power to create a life that you truly love. It starts with being present, with listening to that inner voice, and with taking those brave steps, even when you're not sure where they'll lead. And, as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with this question: what small act of courage, what tiny step towards joy can you take today? And if you want to stay informed, please like videos and subscribe to our channel to help us and you grow.